society. It is
Against all odds.
That's right.
Against all odds.
So it can be done.
For the military, as an example, that the Orthodox must serve.
The ultra-Orthodox do not have to serve. The Orthodox serve.
According to the court.
No. The ultra-Orthodox, there is a small amount. Some of them, by the way, there is. That's what I'm saying. It's very, very tricky because a lot of the social processes that Israel has been going through are good ones. You see a lot more ultra-Orthodox people joining the employment market. You see a lot of them wanting to be drafted, not being forced to be drafted. Of course, their heads, the political religions, the political clericals, are against them being drafted to the army. So that they always live in some kind of a challenging kind of society because some of them really want to work. You see a lot of the women ultra-Orthodox working and doing fantastic work they are the providers of the family. So, and you see that also in the Arab society, in both societies which are very, very crucial to any kind of economical development, you see very good things happening. If you don't mind, we'll take another question.
Yes, please.
People talk about peace as if it's a vacuum, but over the last 20 years, events in the Middle East have changed radically. I mean, before Yitzhak Rabin died, you had nation states, you had Syria with a leader and a nation, you had Libya, you had Iraq. You didn't have ISIS. Today, it's completely being torn apart. You have ISIS spreading all over. You have Gaza under Hamas. You can argue the Palestinians don't have a leader, but they have several factions, one of whom happens to be on top right now. How would you say that affects the peace process comparing 20 years ago to where we are today?
Thank you so much for this question. I think it's a very important question. And basically, I agree with you with your description, the way you're describing the Middle East. I think it's a correct description. Thing is that, first of all, I was speaking about the fact that we have much more challenges, basically, than any kind of other conflict in the world. Opening parenthesis, that is a place where I find the world, in many, many cases, quite hypocritical towards Israel, because they see the fact that Israel is challenged with many, many more constraints and challenges than any other country in the world within a conflict. I would even add to your comments and say that Abu Mazen at least twice was offered very, very generous offers and decided to decline. However, you can see that in this current atmosphere, with ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra and Salim al-Maqdas and all these terrible fundamentalist terror organizations, you see what is happening in Egypt, for instance. Egypt is growing stronger again, in the good sense. For the first time in many, many years, you see Egypt wanting to become much more democratic, understanding that their economic development is truly dependent on America and Israel. We have Jordan, who is very, very much concerned with everything that is happening not so far away from its eastern borders. We have Saudi Arabia, which is a strong country, advocating for many, many years for the Arab, what is called the Arab Initiative. Now, the Arab Initiative is not perfect, but it's an initiative that you can start sitting in a round table and start speaking about potential solutions. And I think it is very, very clear to all of us that we need a regional solution. When we address the Palestinian problem, we need a regional solution, including the support of the United States. That is very, very obvious for any kind of security solutions that we will need in the future. And that is very, very obvious that we will need them.
I will add just one sentence to the answer. You're absolutely right, of course, in your description. And therefore, any resolution of the conflict should take into account on the security field many more constraints than 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. However, the readiness to give the Palestinians the right to choose their life and not to be their controllers, not to be their conquerors, and not to put settlements in the territories is a different story. That has nothing to do with security. Once Israel will stop the policy of putting more Jews in the territories, our international situation will change dramatically. We'll increase the number of moderates within the Palestinians and the Arab world, and then we can take care of our security issues. Yes, please.
We have not had, yes. We have not had a
Absolutely
woman.
right.
So, I'm sorry, just a second, okay? We have not had a woman yet ask a question.
Oh, am I?
Yes, you are.
I understand that Rabin's security detail was concerned about his safety and wanted him to wear a bulletproof vest. Why did he refuse?
Because Yitzhak Rabin did not believe, would never have believed that he would be shot by anyone, let alone a Jewish young man who I make a point never repeating his name. He did not imagine that he would be shot, and he was a true believer. He believed in the security, he believed in the Israeli people, and he just didn't think that could happen in spite of the incitement, in spite of sheer violence that was that happened against him. The only thing that broke his heart was the demonstrations under their house, Yitzhak and Leah's, where they would shout to them, "We will hang you," from the square, like Ceausescu and his wife. These are the same days that the Eastern Europe is falling apart. Or Mussolini, but mostly Ceausescu, most people, because it was very, very soon after Ceausescu was gone. And that is the only thing that broke his heart.
Thank you for responding. Thank you.
I'm just keep thinking, you're talking about the current climate, and the thing that seems to bother me the most is this, it seems like there's a blindness to kind of the rest of the world view with the current Israeli government. They're making Israel into a partisan issue in the United States and in the world, and it's sort of surprising to me that for all of the sophistication of almost all the Israelis that I know, that the Israeli government seems to almost act in a way, it's like they're
Losing America.
yeah, they're losing a lot of people, and I just don't understand it.
I am very, very concerned about it. I have found myself in the past 48 hours apologizing to a lot of my friends in America for the fact that we have become a partisan issue. I was very concerned during the campaign against the Iran deal, and I have very, very few good things to say about the Iran deal, mind you. But I thought that the way Prime Minister Netanyahu was campaigning against the Iran deal was disrespectful. I understand someone today who's quite close with Netanyahu's chambers explained to me that he is almost messiahal about the Iran deal. He's afraid to let go. He's afraid that the world will stop being concerned about Iran and leave the Messiah out. I'm quite concerned about that too, because Iran does fund almost all the, really what we call the evil channel, okay, of the world, of the Middle East especially. So I think the world must continue to be concerned about the way this agreement is executed. But Israel must go back to being a non-partisan issue. And really, I thank you, all of you, for your endless support of Israel, because I know we have not always been able to give you the best tools to do that. And in that respect, I really regret that. But I'm hoping, I really have a lot of hope. I'm not sure it's realistic, but I'm really putting a lot of hope into the meeting that is supposed to take place between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu on Tuesday. I don't know if they will bury any kind of hatchet, but I hope that that will be able to reconstruct the trust and relationship between the two countries.
We have time for just one last question. So, Anna, please.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us. I'm a senior at the University of Maryland, and so all my friends were interested in this issue, and I have a lot of friends who pay attention to this conflict and follow it. We were, I think, about 1 year old when Rabin was assassinated. And so we never really had the Oslo process. We never really had that feeling of hope looking at the region, and all we've seen in the last 20 years is increase in settlements and occupation, and a rise in terrorism, but also a rise in racism in Israeli society. And so, even though there are a lot of challenges right now that Israel faces, and a lot of challenges that the region poses to Israel, I'm curious, like, what, as a leader in a major Israeli party, what actually are your concrete next steps to try to create an environment for peace?
Unfortunately, my party was not elected to lead our policy. Our policy was very, very clear, going back to the negotiations table, trying to redraw the maps, really pulling everything that has been agreed upon in past years, trying to see what we can push forward. Netanyahu gave a speech in the UN about a month and a half ago, which wasn't such a bad speech considering Abu Mazen's speech, which I was very, very upset about, I have to tell you. But, you know, he's doing his job, I guess. He's not doing it well, unfortunately, I think, for the Palestinian people, but he's doing his job, I guess. Netanyahu gave a speech that I was listening very carefully to. And he called Abu Mazen to come back to the table. For the first time, he did not put any kind of conditions, which I was never happy about the fact that he was putting on conditions. But for the first time, he did not pose any conditions and asked him to come back. Abu Mazen, unfortunately, did not take his hand and said, okay, let's go back to the negotiations table. In his turn, he returned with a condition that I can understand, but I don't think that's the right thing to do for his people at that moment, and that is freeze the construction in the settlements, which I completely agree with, generally speaking, but I think we should just go back to the table. And it's like two kids being stubborn, and you just have to pull them together. And so we're pushing forward speeches in the Knesset. We are trying. I know that Bougie Herzog speaks to Abu Mazen, he was actually at Abu Mazen in August, before flames, really, because before the terror really rose its ugly head. He speaks to Netanyahu about it. That's probably one of the reasons why I think we should not join his government, because I don't think he wants to promote anything to do with the peace process. But I think eventually, and that's what I keep saying about this region, the Middle East is like the Everglades. If you do not run the conflict runs you. And that is our deepest concern. That's why I think we should take actions. That's why we're talking about it, promoting it, working for it. Next week there's going to be, we have a newspaper in Israel called Haaretz, maybe you know it. There is a big peace convention. Some of us are going to be taking part of it, trying to have an effect on grassroots projects. So we're working at it under the assumption that eventually he will have to pursue some kind of negotiations. But security of Israel must be maintained. And at the moment, unfortunately, we cannot even portray the type of, the characteristics of the terrorists. And I think Abu Mazen has a lot of responsibility to lowering the flames. It's not organized terror like we knew before, but he needs to really calm down. It's not in his interest, not just in our interest, obviously, but it's also not in his interest that the Third Intifada should continue.
Let me finish with just a last story. Ayelet, you mentioned that Rabin didn't want to go to the event at the strategic
He did not
event.
say he didn't want. I said he was reluctant.
He didn't want to go to it.
Sure.
Before that event, people like me told him, listen, there are so many demonstrations against you and against your policies. Why don't you organize a counter demonstration? His answer was, we don't need it. We don't need it. We are in power. We are the government. We bring the people a solution, and they will support us when they will see what we do for them. He didn't understand what every American politician understands that politics is an ongoing campaign. So he didn't enjoy the idea of going to that event. His approach to the peace was not, he was not a member of Peace Now.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he didn't like them. He didn't come to this approach from a moral point of view. He was very pragmatic, down to earth, 2 legs deep on the ground. His approach was very pragmatic, very realistic. And the story that I want to finish by is the story, I'm sure you all remember the picture when Arafat and Rabin signed the peace agreement in Washington. And they were standing, and Clinton was standing in the middle with his 2 hands like that. You remember this? Why did he have these hands like that? The story is very simple. Before I came with him to the event, and we sat in the back room, and the question was, what is going to happen if Arafat will kiss me, Rabin? Arafat loved to kiss people, not twice, but 3 times and 4 times. Rabin was reluctant about that, because he wanted to show the Israelis that he's not going to hug Arafat. He goes in a very cautious way to this political arrangement. So what happens if Arafat is going to kiss me? So Eitan Haber, Rabin's advisor, said, very simple. Clinton will stand in the middle, will hold them both like that. If he feels that Arafat is coming too close, he will push him back. and they rehearsed it. Eitan Haber was Arafat, Rabin was Rabin, and they stood like that, and they imagined it. It went well. Then they went up to the balcony. Luckily, Arafat decided not to kiss her.
But you know what? After Arafat and Rabin shook hands, Rabin told Paris, now it's your turn.
Well, thank you. I think that was really an extraordinary and incredibly insightful conversation. We're lucky to have both of you, Professor Perry and MK Nachmias-Verben. Thank you very much for joining us. We give a round of applause. Make the presence of a few folks here. Barbara Zakheim is the chair of the JCRC's Israel Commission. Delegate Jeff Waldstreicher, who popped by to say hello and just to hear us. Deborah Foyer, who is the head of the JCRC's communication group, which works all the time on counteracting anti-Israel sentiment in the media, but also promoting pro-Israel sentiment. I want to thank the co-sponsors. Give me a moment, there's a few. Americans for Peace Now, American Jewish Committee, Washington Region, the Neighborhood International, Gather the Jews, Gather the Jews, Israel on Campus, Coalition of Greater Washington, the Jewish Federation, Israel Bonds, Jewish National Fund, Stand With Us, or Kodesh, and of course the Embassy of Israel. Now, before we go ahead, and I'd like to give our Ayala the gift. Come up here, please join us. We want to thank you for your rules, for going ahead and joining us for 4 days. We still have another 2 days of 15 more events in 2 days or so. And really, the amount of exposure, the message of hope, and the message of resiliency that you show is really, I think, infectious and enthusiastic. And I think the reason we decided to give it tzedakah bash is, tzedakah shares the same root as tzaddik, or justice. So, and we really believe that you are doing your best and you're earnest to pursue a just society for both Israel and for Israeli society into the future. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate it. It says on the back, member of Knesset, Ayala Nachmias-Verben, November 5th through 9, 2015, 23 to 27 Cheshvan, the JCRC of Greater Washington Israel Action Center, 3rd Annual Scholar in Residence.
Thank you so much.
Please join the JCRC at future events. Have a safe ride home. Good night.